Hey everyone, welcome back. I wanted to talk today about something that a lot of you have asked me to address on this platform, but I've definitely talked about it a lot on the blog and social media over the years. I'm just going to share a little bit today about my postpartum anxiety story. How I found out that I had it, how I've treated it in the past, and how I've learned to kind of manage it and live with it. So I have 4 kids. My oldest is 10 years old and my youngest is a little younger than 2. And I am pretty confident that I have dealt with some degree of postpartum anxiety after each one of them. The difference is with my oldest, my 10-year-old, I definitely did not recognize that that was what was happening to me at the time. And it wasn't until my second, my daughter, was about 9 months old that it finally got so bad that I asked for help. So I'm a big proponent of sharing my story and other people sharing their postpartum mood disorder stories because I think number one, we just have to get rid of the shame and the stigma. There's nothing to be ashamed of. And talking about it like this, it just, every single time I share my story, lots of people message me and say, oh my gosh, I had never recognized this in myself until you put it out there like that. And now I totally see that that's what's going on with me. I'm gonna go and get some help. And so if that happens for just one person by making this video, then that will be worth it. I only knew to reach out and get help because somebody before me had shared their story. So I just feel like I need to pass it on. I need to be very open about what happened to me so that I can help other people. Okay, so the way it manifested with my first baby is, and I only know this in hindsight, was this anger, but not so much with him. With him, it wasn't as much the anger. I only had one baby to deal with. And like life was pretty simple with just him. I wasn't working a whole lot on the blog. It was more of like a hobby. I didn't really have like a full-time job with him. So I could kind of like white knuckle my way through what I was dealing with him. And I think that's a big reason why I was able to kind of manage it without recognizing it and getting help. But a big thing that happened with him were intrusive thoughts. So for example, when he was about 5 months old, I went with my husband to Atlanta and our 5-month-old baby boy, and we stayed at an Embassy Suites, and they put us up on like, I don't know, 5th or 6th floor. And you know how Embassy Suites has like that open atrium in the middle with that like railing, and I was panicked. Obsessively thinking of us dropping him over the edge to the point where I would not allow him to go from the room to the elevator without being in his stroller, strapped in and buckled. So like before we opened the door to the room or before the elevator opened, he was strapped in and buckled to his stroller. And I think part of that is kind of like a normal rational fear, right? Like you could trip or something, I don't know. To this day, like the Embassy Suites atrium totally freaks me out. But what was super concerning about that was that night, I could not stop replaying this vision in my mind. I mean, it was like a tape on repeat over and over and over again of us throwing the baby, accidentally tripping, throwing the baby over the railing at the Embassy Suites. And it was to the point where it was like, I think I was having a panic attack in bed at like 2 in the morning behind like 2 closed doors all the way back in the room at the Embassy Suites about how somehow our baby in the middle of the night was going to end up over the railing into the atrium. That was a little bit of a red flag. Also lots of other, intrusive thoughts about like speeding off the side of the road. What would happen if this knife flew out of my hand and hit him in the eye? Like just like things I didn't want to do these things to him. I was just horrified that I would accidentally do these things to him. So yeah, and some of that is kind of like a new mom fear thing, but the way that it was so obsessive and would constantly take over my thoughts, that to me, a non-professional, just a mom who has been through this before, that to me is the red flag side of it. So I do think I dealt with it to a degree with him, but I never reached out and never got medication or help with him. So flash forward, I have his little sister, and with her, it became about anger and rage. And this is the part people really should talk more about, is I would just be super short-tempered with a toddler. You know, like irrationally, I would be like, I know that he like is just doing normal toddler things, but oh, he would make me so angry. Or like it would make me so angry that my daughter, like my infant, would be like crying 2 minutes after I put her down. And I want to stress, like, I did not ever act on that anger toward them. Like I didn't abuse them. I would just get very mad about things. I would be very mad at my husband for just silly things. And it just was like an anger that I could not, it just was irrational, and I knew it, but it was just there living in me. So there was that. There was also the intrusive thoughts, like all the ways, again, it was like the heights. It was like the fear of stairs and railings. I didn't want to hold my daughter taking her up and down stairs. At the time we were looking for a new house, and I was like, oh, no, we cannot have any kind of second story house. Like 100% no, they're gonna die if we have like stairs. And then also with her, my thoughts, my obsessive thoughts. So I had a little bit of postpartum OCD, and that was focused on the obsessive thoughts that I could not shake. And so it wasn't for me about like cleaning bottles all the time, making sure like everyone's hands are clean all the time. And it can be about that. But for me, it was like constantly cycling through obsessive thoughts about all the ways people I loved would die. Like that day, how like I just could not stop thinking about how everybody was gonna die that day. And I could not stop worrying and obsessively checking myself for anything that was gonna kill me. So like cancer was a big one. And right before I wound up getting help, I noticed like a patch of cellulite on my leg, which, you know, that happens. I think I had just turned like 30 and I had a patch of cellulite, because that's just what happens as you age. And but in my mind I was like, but what if it's not cellulite? What if this is stage 4 metastatic cancer and they have to cut your leg off? I mean, it went there. It just went from here to there and like that, and I could not stop thinking about it. I flew out for a business trip in LA, and I went to a symphony at the Pantages Theater, and we were seated in the balcony, and the whole time I could not stop thinking about how the people sitting near me, I was like 3 rows back from the top of the balcony, could just pick me up and throw me over the balcony. So I just couldn't stop thinking about that. Then the flight home, I was rubbing my leg incessantly, trying to feel for lumps for this like cancer I was convinced I had. And then when I got home, I had already seen this article shared by a woman who became a dear friend of mine, Catherine Stone. She's the founder of Postpartum Progress, and it is the signs and symptoms of postpartum depression and anxiety in plain mama English. And up until that point, I didn't actually know that postpartum anxiety was a thing, right? Like, I knew I wasn't sad. I didn't cry. I hardly ever cried. I didn't feel depressed. And I didn't associate those symptoms of like anger, excessive fear with anything like depression. But when I read the symptoms of anxiety and OCD, I was like, oh, hey now, wait a second. Like check. I think I have all of these. Up until this point, when I realized that maybe this is a thing that I had, I honestly just thought I was a bad mom. Just not cut out for motherhood. What person gets so angry at their toddler and their baby? What person is so freaking stressed out by parenthood that they cannot stop thinking about all the ways everybody's gonna die? I just was convinced, like, you made a bad choice. Like, you were never supposed to be a mom, and now you brought 2 children into the world, and you can't even mother them. So it's a tough place to be. And so when I read these symptoms of anxiety and OCD, and it makes me cry every time, because for finally that moment in my life, I thought, oh my God, I can fix this. Like, this doesn't have to be my reality and my children's reality for the rest of our lives. So even still, knowing that it was a treatable thing, there was this stigma inside of me that I needed to just try to handle it on my own. And so I was just gonna stop drinking caffeine, and I was gonna work out more, I was gonna eat better, and it was gonna be fine. I didn't need medication. I am not the type who needs medication, is what I was telling myself. And so then after that business trip and all that stuff went down, then shortly after that, a few days later, I was essentially having a panic attack and I was concerned that I was having a heart attack. And my tongue went numb, and I had just dropped my child off for Mother's Day out, and there was a doctor's office I had never been to before, and it was just on my way home, and I just saw it on the side of the road, and I just pulled off and I walked in, and I was like, I need you to see me right now because I think I'm having a heart attack. And they were like, I'm pretty sure you're not, but okay. And they ended up getting me in later that afternoon, and I walked in and I was like, so there's this lump on my leg, and I think it might be cancer, but I don't know if it actually is. And I can't feel my tongue. I might be having a heart attack, but also I think I might have postpartum anxiety. And the doctor, bless his heart, was like, okay, let's look at the lump on your leg. That's just cellulite. I'm not even going to biopsy it. Like, that's totally fine. You're not having a heart attack. And yeah, I think you probably are having some anxiety. So let's get you some medication. So he wrote me a prescription for Zoloft, and it wasn't I didn't get better right away. But after taking it for just a couple weeks, I immediately was like, oh my God, I was smiling so much that it was hurting my face. Like, I hadn't felt that kind of joy in so long. And I remember holding my daughter for the first time in a long time and actually really feeling her. Like before, it was such a disconnect. And for the first time, I just felt like we were connected. Like, she was warm, and I just it was a feeling that I had missed when holding her. And that was kind of sad. It took it till she was 9 months old to get that. But I'm glad that even though I waited way too long, I eventually reached out. And, moving forward with my third baby and my fourth baby, I got postpartum anxiety again with each one of them. And I knew exactly the symptoms to look out for. I had prescriptions ready and waiting to go. Zoloft ended up not being the best treatment for me. It was a great kind of first aid, kind of let's get you through this sort of thing. I ended up transitioning off of that and onto Lexapro. Lexapro ended up working out well for me, and I took that after the third and the fourth baby. After the third baby, I took it for a couple months, then I weaned off, then I realized I probably needed to be back on it, and then so I was on it for maybe another 6 months after that. After my fourth baby, I was on it for about 6 months after I had him. And they're not perfect medications, and I totally get why some people choose not to go the medication route, but for me, it worked out great. It was the better alternative than to white knuckling my way through postpartum anxiety. And now, I'm off of them, and I think I still deal a lot with generalized anxiety, and I think I always have my whole life, and I only now can recognize that now that I have dealt with the more acute postpartum anxiety. And so I will always be managing anxiety throughout my life. But I am forever grateful that I had the resources to recognize when it got super, super bad. Also, another warning sign when I had my daughter is my appetite was completely non-existent, and I lost so much weight after I had her. I was down to a weight lower than I had been in high school, which was like, hey, cool, I'm super skinny. And that's something that to this day I still mentally struggle with, because at my lowest weight, I was my very sickest and just the worst place of my life, my lowest adult weight. And so, I sometimes think, gosh, it would be nice to get back to that weight. And then I have to remind myself, no, you were only that weight because you were very unhealthy. And it's so much more important to be a happy and healthy mom than it is to be a skinny mom. So that's a little bit about how I came to recognize that I was dealing with postpartum anxiety, my symptoms, and how I managed to get through it. I am going to link up to some great resources for you in the description and the comments below. And if you would like to chime in the comments with your own story of how you recognized postpartum anxiety or depression or OCD in yourself, I would love to have that comment down below. It's just, I think, comforting for somebody who's going through it to hear from people who have also been through it, especially those of us who have made it out of it and can kind of reach back and try to pull some more women out. Thanks so much for listening to this very important topic today. Please share this video with your friends. Have an open and honest dialogue with your friends and your family about perinatal mood disorders, because they affect a lot of us. It should be something that we are more prepared for and we're having more conversations about. Bye, you guys.